What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video, I'm going to be going through my top 24 tight end rankings for the 2024 fantasy football season. If you guys have missed it, I've already gone through my running backs, wide receivers, and quarterbacks. Today we have tight ends, and then probably later on today, I'll have my overall rankings. If you guys want my full top 200 rankings, you can find those in the description. Free to you guys if you want to download them, take them into your fantasy drafts. If you do enjoy the video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. And let's just dive right into it. And starting off in tier 1, like I've done for the other videos, not going overly in depth on every single player. You know, we're kind of getting right up there with drafts. You may have already drafted, you want to make some trades. It's just like some quick hitter content for you guys. And in tier 1, I've been pretty set on these like top 4. I know a lot of people have some separation between the Laporta Kelsey tier and McBride Andrews. I think they should be going very, very close together. So I have Sam Laporta number 1, Travis Kelsey number 2, Trey McBride number 3, and Mark Andrews number 4. And when you look at these 4 tight ends last year, Sam Laporta was, I believe, at 14.1 PPR points per game. Travis Kelsey was at 14.6. When Trey McBride was made the starter, he averaged 15 PPR points per game. And then Mark Andrews, if you remove the one game where he left with injury last year, which ended his regular season, he would have been in that 14 to 15 PPR point per game window. So all these dudes were very close together, like in their starting healthy games. So I just don't think there should be a significant separation between Laporta and Kelsey compared to Trey McBride and Mark Andrews. You can see in my overall rankings, they're very, very close together. Now shifting into tier 2, this is where I have Dalton Kincaid and Kyle Pitts. I think both these guys are solid picks this year. For Dalton Kincaid, he was a solid tight end prospect. He has a fantastic situation, like potential number 1 target here for the Josh Allen-led Bills. You have Stephon Diggs is gone, Gabe Davis is gone, you have some uncertainty at the wide receiver position. Maybe Keon Coleman steps up in year 1, but he's also a rookie, not a slam dunk prospect. You have Curtis Samuel coming in. Khalil Shakir's been on that team, but Dalton Kincaid really has the opportunity for a monster year 2 breakout. And then you have Kyle Pitts, and I've already seen some of the comments. Some people are just never going to draft Kyle Pitts. They've been burned, over the past few years. They're just completely out on him. I am not out, and the reason why is I think he's proven through 3 years that he is a talented player. The dude as a rookie went for over 1,000 receiving yards. At the tight end position, you just don't see that. And there's something very clearly different about this season. He actually has good quarterback play with Kirk Cousins, and Arthur Smith is gone. So I feel like if you're someone who's drafted him in the past, you've been burned, like you can just say, I'm done with him. Like that's fine, right? Not really my business. But I feel like you're putting yourself in a spot where you already, took the loss on drafting Kyle Pitts, and now by completely avoiding him, you're just not giving yourself the opportunity to actually capitalize on that breakout. So I do think Kyle Pitts is a solid player. He's a talented guy, now finally has the offense around him. So I do like Kyle Pitts here in tier 2, and I think he's a really nice pick going at like the 5-6 turn. A great opportunity to get someone who I do think has a pretty high ceiling, but at a little bit of a discount. Then pivoting into tier 3, this is where I have George Kittle and Evan Ingram. I know a lot of people would have George Kittle up in that Kincaid Pitts tier. And for me, I just can't get there as long as Brandon Ayuk is on that roster. This is not anti-George Kittle. I think he is a great player. I think in a different situation, you could probably argue him as high as tier 1, but he's gone down in points per game since his second year in the NFL, like just consistently lower and lower and lower fantasy points per game. So I don't know if he has that elite upside that maybe we thought he had early on in his career and still could have in a different situation. Just here with the 49ers, I think he's a little bit of a lower ceiling option. And then for Evan Ingram, I think a lot of people are probably going to overreact to the preseason game where he caught 2 touchdowns. And Evan Ingram was great last year. He was a volume monster. But the one thing I do want to point out is that the games that he dominated in were the games where Christian Kirk was not playing out with injury. So towards the end of last year, Christian Kirk was out of the lineup. That's when Evan Ingram really dominated, commanded a ton of volume. Same thing in that preseason game. Christian Kirk rested. He did not play. And that's when Evan Ingram absolutely balled out. So I do think he can be a pretty high upside guy if Christian Kirk does miss time. But I think that's obviously not the thing we're like expecting here in 2024. So maybe a little bit lower on Ingram than consensus, but still a fine pick. And I think he's like marginally ahead of the tier 4 guys, which is going to include David Njoku, Jake Ferguson, and Brock Bowers. I don't know if there's going to be a ton of consensus within this tier. I think a lot of people are going to prefer Jake Ferguson, and I think that's totally fine. I think when you're looking at the situation, Jake Ferguson is definitely in a much better spot. He's probably going to be the number 2 target on this Cowboys offense. He's going to have a lot of touchdown upside. For me, I just give David Njoku the edge here purely based on talent. I think David Njoku in the right situation could be producing up with those guys in tier 1. It's just that he's with this like Deshaun Watson-led Browns. We saw last year, he absolutely tore it up to end the season when he was playing with Joe Flacco. So the ability is there. It's pretty much just going to come down to how much he is going to be limited by his team's quarterback play. But if Watson does end up missing time and we can get some Jameis Winston out there, just absolutely chuck into Amari Cooper, David Njoku, I think he's a super fun fantasy option. And then the last guy in this tier, Brock Bowers, super talented. Talent-wise, he would be ranked ahead of this. It's just not a great year 1 situation with the Raiders. Quarterback play is going to be suspect. You have target competition with Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, but I do think his preseason usage was pretty encouraging. They were moving him all over the place. He was playing out wide, he was playing in the slot, he was playing in line, then I'm lining up in the backfield. So I do think, they're going to get him involved creatively. It should be fun. I just don't know what the ceiling is here in year 1. Moving into tier 5, only 2 guys here. It's going to be Dallas Goedert and Taysom Hill. Dallas Goedert just feels like a very bland pick. He doesn't have a ton of upside. He has not, shown any upside so far in his NFL career, but he's a safe option. You missed on the first 11. You want a safe player. I think he's a fine pick. And then Taysom Hill is just someone who I continue to get higher and higher on. It's just a situation where when you look at this Saints offense, Taysom Hill is going to have a role. I was someone who didn't really love Kamara fantasy-wise, thought he would lose work. But you're looking at that running back room. Kendre Miller's on IR. Kamara was not great last year. I think Taysom Hill, he's going to run some routes. He's going to have a few trick plays here or there. But I also think he's going to get legit work on the ground. And if he does have that tight end designation, I'd rather bank on Taysom Hill like scoring a rushing touchdown than some of these dudes going after him like getting into the end zone. So I like Taysom Hill. I think he's going to have very unique usage. But I do think he's like a nice option if you do miss out on one of those top 11. And then looking at tier 6, we have TJ Hawkinson, Luke Musgrave, and Dalton Schultz. For Hawkinson, it's just tough to, kind of rank him here accurately because we just don't know about his injury. Coming off the torn ACL, obviously not as great of a situation as he had last year. Kirk Cousins is gone. You have Sam Darnold at quarterback, probably not going to be 100% of the same guy. Plus you have target competition with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. So I think this tier 6 spot is fair. And then Luke Musgrave, I think is interesting. We know the Packers are probably going to roll out a wide receiver committee. I guess the question is just, are they going to do the same thing at the tight end position with Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft? If they don't, I think Luke Musgrave is pretty interesting. He was their clear-cut starter early on in the season last year. Round 2 pick, was a rookie last season. Really good athlete, on a good offense. I think he's definitely interesting as like a later round flyer. Then someone who I'm probably lower on the consensus, Dalton Schultz. I just struggle to draft tight ends that aren't competing to be the number 2 or number 3 target on their team. You look at this Texans wide receiver room, Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell. With Dalton Schultz, I think he's a fine pick in like best ball, but in terms of actually being confident throwing him into your lineup, it seems like you're just trying to hit in the touchdown department, and I just think there are better options out there that I have ranked ahead of him. And then tier 7 here, some guys who maybe I'm cooling off on a little bit, some dudes who maybe have some upside to be the number 2 target in their offense, and then just some flyers here. So we have Pat Freiermuth, Hunter Henry, Tyler Conklin, Ben Sinnott, Noah Fant, Greg Dulcich, Isaiah Likely, and then Cole Kmet. So starting off here with Pat Freiermuth, he was someone that earlier on in the offseason, just a few weeks ago, pretty much before preseason, I had him ranked in like that tier 5 area with Dallas Goedert. And the upside is that he could be the number 2 target for the Steelers, right? Behind George Pickens, they've got pretty much nothing going on at wide receiver. Freiermuth, even though he was terrible last year, his first 2 seasons, he had pretty decent fantasy production. Unfortunately, we are getting Arthur Smith in this offense because you have Pat Freiermuth pretty much splitting the snaps 50-50 with Darnell Washington in the preseason. That is not great. That is not going to get it done on an offense that is not going to be a good passing attack. So I've definitely cooled off on Pat Freiermuth. I think the argument for Hunter Henry and Tyler Conklin are pretty similar. You're hoping that, they could be the number 2 target on their offenses. For Tyler Conklin, you have Garrett Wilson and then not a ton else, like Mike Williams coming off a season-ending injury, not a ton going on at wide receiver. And then for Hunter Henry, just a proven player. Patriots wide receiver room is very young, or you've got like veterans who aren't like elite upside guys. So I think both those dudes are just aiming for number 2 targets on their rosters. Ben Sinnott is probably someone I'm going to be higher on than most. I just think at this point in the draft, why not take a flyer on a young second round dude, a great athlete? This was pretty much the bet you were making with Sam Laporta last year. Also on a team that just traded away Jahan Dotson. You have Terry as the clear number 1. I know Zach Ertz is there, but if Sinnott is good enough, he should be able to break out. And maybe we get like a Trey McBride-esque second half where he was, kind of playing behind Zach Ertz. He overtakes him and then just does not look back. So I think he's interesting and someone where maybe you don't draft him, but could be looking for him on waivers. Then we have Noah Fant. He's been thrown into a tight end by committee over the past couple of seasons, and I think he's more talented than, that situation kind of suggested. It's kind of just like the Shane Waldron thing. He's going to play 3 tight ends. That's something I'm going to talk about a little bit later on in this video. But I think this new Seahawks offense is interesting. So someone who's proven to be talented. He's been like a back-end tight end 1 fantasy-wise before he got traded to the Seahawks. So we'll see how he looks. Greg Dulcich is someone who I've been a fan of the talent on over the past couple of seasons. He just hasn't really been able to stay healthy. Maybe he can stay healthy and becomes like a solid tight end option for Bo Nix. Isaiah Likely is literally the only example of a tight end handcuff where we don't have a ton of fantasy relevant tight ends. So if George Kittle goes down, Evan Ingram goes down, there's no interest in starting their backup tight end because they're just not going to do anything for you. Isaiah Likely's the one guy where if Mark Andrews goes down, he's probably given you mid-tier tight end 1 or better production. Pretty much every game Mark Andrews has been out, Isaiah Likely has played a very solid role. So I don't know if you're straight up drafting him in redraft, maybe in deeper leagues, but someone where if Mark Andrews were to get injured, he should be an immediate pickup. And then the final guy here is going to be Cole Kmet. I understand I'm going to be significantly lower on him than consensus, and just hear me out here. It's pretty much the same argument I made with Dalton Schultz, where he's at best the number 4 target behind DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, Keenan Allen, but it is even worse than Dalton Schultz because he is no longer a full-time player. I talked about Shane Waldron, now with the Bears, and he is using that tight end by committee. Cole Kmet and Gerald Everett are splitting snaps pretty evenly. So if you're telling me you have 3 stud wide receivers, you also have a good pass catching back in DeAndre Swift, and Cole Kmet is not even a full-time player, I just don't see the vision where you actually trust actually starting him in your redraft lineups. Like I talked about with Schultz, in best ball, it's fine. You just hit the spike weeks, the touchdowns. But in terms of actually having to set your lineup and place Cole Kmet in there, you're shooting for the 5 for 50 and a touchdown, but there are going to be way more 2 for 20s out there where he's just completely giving you nothing. So not in on Cole Kmet this year. I'm a Bears fan. I think he's a solid player. In a different situation, I think he'd be a decent pick. I just don't think it's in the cards for him this year, barring an extreme amount of injuries or just a complete usage shift than what we've seen in the preseason, which is just not something I'm expecting here. So that is going to wrap it up for my top 24 tight ends. Let me know your guys' thoughts. If you have any fantasy questions, drop them down below. I'll make sure to get back to everyone as soon as I can. But thank you all for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one.